Hello, I'm Leah Brown, the Assistant Director of Education at the Moat Museum. The Moat Museum is a civil rights museum here in Farmville, Virginia. We cover 13 years of history, starting with the 1951 strike and ending with the school's reopening in Prince Edward County in 1964. Part of that timeline in Prince Edward is the school closings. Prince Edward County closed their schools from 1959 to 1964. Here with me today we have Miss Rita Odom Mosley. Miss Mosley has written 4 books. Today we're launching her latest book, Silence Broken After 50 Years. Welcome, Miss Rita.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm great and happy to be here.
Perfect. I'm glad to have you here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to segue so Miss Rita can speak about her book.
I am so excited to be launching my 4th book titled Silence Broken After 50 Years, Brown versus Boyd and Prince Edward County, 1959 to 1964. I will be reading you short passages from the book to give you an idea of what's inside. Excuse me. In writing this book, I asked my schoolmates to tell their stories during the closing of the public schools for 5 years in Prince Edward County. Some were reluctant to talk about it after 60 years. I was directly affected myself, so I understood the pain that still lingers. I felt their stories would be informative, but I didn't realize how much history would be told. I realized that they not only had a story to tell, but they had a story that needed to be told for themselves. I had, excuse me, I had no idea what a phenomenal thing I had come across. Shortly after beginning the interviews, I realized this book did something that no one had done for this population of children, now adults, within 50 years. What I found out as I was listening to them or reading their stories they had given me was the miraculous thing that was occurring before my eyes. For so many of my schoolmates, telling their stories was a relief, but mostly important, a therapeutic mechanism that I had given them without knowing it would occur. Throughout my interviews, I felt over and over again the anguish, pain, and forgiveness eliminated or subsided. I was able to administer therapy for them and myself without being aware of it until it occurred, and that I am most proud. Now I will read you a passage from a parent. The school closing impacted my life as a parent because the kids couldn't go to school. It hurt me real bad because the kids couldn't go to school. And they wanted to know why they couldn't go, and the only answer I could come up with was that color of their skin. It really hurt me bad. I still can't get over it until now. I still can't because the kids could have gone a long way. This is a parent, Ms. Ward. The next one I will read to you is what Willie said. I had just started in the 1st grade when school closed in Prince Edward. Just started 6 years old. I found out that school had closed through my parents and through the news. I was ripping and rearing and ready to go to school every day. And just one day, they just said we weren't going to school anymore. So you know, I couldn't go, just couldn't go. When I heard it, I felt bad because I just started. I would have just started in school, and you know that's something you want to do. I'm going to get ready to start school. I'm getting ready to go to school. You ripping and rearing, ready to go, and then to have it just cut off all of a sudden like this, it's something. And next I will read a passage from Ms. Hendricks. And she said, I was in the 10th grade when school closed. I heard about the school closing in the newspaper and radio. My parents' word of mouth and from neighbors' friends. The whole town was lit up with it. I will never forget it. Lord, I will never forget it. I found out about it in our church. I knew it before it hit the papers. Reverend Griffin, he told us. He always kept us abreast of the political stuff. And then I'll read you a passage from another parent, another student. Betty said, I started out when I was 6 years old at Worsham, when it was an all-white school, okay? I rode the L.L. Irvin bus. Then we moved. When we moved, I was in the 2nd grade, and I went to Green Bay, Virginia Elementary School, and it was an all-white school, too. Now, when the school closed, I didn't go to school anywhere. I was 7 when I got out of school, going on 8, and didn't go to school anywhere. When I went back to school in the 3rd grade, it was an all-black school in Worsham. The white school had left there. God bless every last one of you, she said. You all were excellent to us. I love every last one of you. It was a lot of you, and they meant a lot to me. They could have been cruel to us, but we could not say that about you. And finally, I will read another passage from my book, Silence Broken, After 50 Years. Thurman said, in 1959, I was in the 5th grade. I found out about the school closing by people talking and my parents. I was upset and wondering if I was going to get an education or not. When school closed, I stayed out. I didn't go to school anywhere else. When free schools reopened in Prince Edward County, Farmville, I went back to the elementary school, branch 2 in 5th grade. When I went back, I was of age, so they skipped me. I went to the grade they put me in. I missed 2 grades. When I went back, I was old. They put me in the 10th grade. I finished high school in 1973. My mother had 20 children all together. At that time, I had 10 brothers and 8 sisters when school was closed at home. At least 2 or 3 of my sisters and brothers went away to school, and the rest of us stayed at home. The whole 5 years, our public schools were closed. And these are just some of what is inside Silence Broken. I have 160 interviews and pieces that span from Plessy versus Ferguson all the way to the year 2020.
Thank you for sharing excerpts from your book, how the students were impacted, their everyday, their families. It's important for me as a historian to have these stories recorded so we can share them, to say this is what happened to this community. This is what these students went through. Now we're going to begin the question and answer portion. We have some pre-thought of questions, so let's go ahead and jump into it. Why did you write this book? What inspired you?
I wrote this book for a couple of reasons. One, at the time, there wasn't much said about the children that were directly affected by the closing of the schools. And the other reason was because I wanted people to know what happened to us. I came into contact with people in Virginia and other states that had never heard of this before, and some just didn't believe it happened. So I figured if I gathered enough interviews, and there wouldn't be any doubt whether this happened or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And from my personal experience, I learned about this 3 or 4 years ago, which is startling because it's Virginia history. and it should be taught for sure. So, our second question, how did you get started collecting interviews with this?
Well, what happened was after writing 2 previous books of mine, No School and No School Second Edition, that story was basically about me and my experiences, even though I mentioned other schoolmates and classmates in it. But I decided to do a last book, which is this one, on the classmates and focus on them and their stories. So that was why I actually did this.
Okay. So when you're collecting your classmates' stories, did you call them up? Did you just go to their homes? How did you get this information?
You would not believe what I had to do. I met the people everywhere. Anywhere I could meet them, I would get their stories. If I met them in Walmart, I'd find a corner and I'd get their stories. If I saw them on the sidewalk, I'd stop them and I'd get their stories. I have interviewed some in the parking lot, just leaning on their cars. I did stage plan a few of them in the local library. Some people sent me their stories in the mail. It was just various ways of, I went to some of their homes. I did everything I could to gather all of these interviews. This book consists of about 160 interviews.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And it shows the urgency and the passion behind getting these stories. Absolutely. It's amazing. What was your favorite way of interviewing someone? Was it just like finding them or planning it? Or another version of that question is, what was your favorite interview to do for this book?
My process of interviewing wasn't actually planned. I just knew that I wanted to get as many of us that were directly affected.
Okay.
And not only the children, I have the principals interviews. There were principals during that time. I have parents with their children, interviews in pairs. So I did everything I could. I didn't have a favorite thing that I did. I just, any way I could reach them or talk to them, I was for it. And they were great.
Awesome.
Because they were willing to do it and take their pictures wherever they were. Many of their pictures are in this book also with their stories.
Yeah. I've read some of the interviews, saw some of the pictures, and I always stop to like look at the faces to see the people who were impacted. Just photographs are important to me because, you know, sometimes you get all gussied up for a photograph, sometimes you just candid shots, but it shows like a person. And in the case of Silence Broken, it puts a face to a story. It's easy to forget or misremember that these were children who were impacted by the school closings, and then their families and the community, how it changed everything in Prince Edward. So to me, it's really important to have those photographs in there. Is there anyone you wanted to interview that you hadn't gotten to or you couldn't?
Well, I interviewed my 3rd grade teacher, and I actually wanted to find Miss Coley, my teacher that taught me when just a few years old. It looked like she was just a few years older than I was. Who taught me when school reopened, and Miss Johnson. Those were 2 people that I would have liked to have interviewed, but I had such a variety of people in this book. It didn't make up for it, but you know, I was able to be satisfied with it.
All right, Ms. Rita, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience today?
Yes, I had to write this down because I didn't want to forget it. I wanted to thank some of those who helped me with the book Silence Broken for 50 years. My son, who is always consulting me in every book. My publisher, Wayne Drumheller. Dorothy Holcomb is a schoolmate who gave me 13 of her family interviews out of the 160.
Wow.
You, Leah, thank you.
Ms. Rita.
Cameron Patterson, the director of the museum, and the rest of the Morden staff, I thank you and appreciate it. All teachers, giving young people like me the foundation to succeed. I want to thank them. And most of all, I want to thank the people who allowed me to interview them. I will be forever grateful, because without their interviews, there would be no book. And last, I always want to thank my dear mother. I hope she's smiling down at me today, because she gave her up her only little girl and sent her to live with strangers so she could get her education. So there's more people that I thanked in acknowledgments, and I always thank people in all of my books that had something to do with or helped me in some way. Matter of fact, one of my books, I thank so many people, I think it took 2 or 3 pages. But this one, Silence Broken, is something that I've been wanting to do for years. And every time I meet a schoolmate, they say, when are you going to get that book out? I want to be here when you do. Or they say, I'm still waiting for that book, Ms. Mosley. So I am happy to let them know it's here, it's available, and it's ready. It can be, the book can be purchased online at my website, which is IamRitaOdomMosley.com, on Amazon, and I have the first book in the Morden Museum, the one that's no school. So I think I missed something, but I'm going to let this work.
Alrighty. Well, Ms. Rita, thank you so much for sharing your work with us, for the work you did to even create and cultivate Silence Broken after 50 years. It's a tremendous gift, these interviews, and we appreciate it.
Yes, and you know, the book is a variety of so many things, and it's for all ages. I made sure my books would cover all ages, and they can be used for gifts. Christmas is coming up.
It is. Smart.
Any type of holiday, and they just can be used for just good reading.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Thank you all for watching and engaging with us and helping us launch Silence Broken after 50 years.